And then Suzette, I guess I didn't call on you because I knew you would do a self-introduction and get the program started.
All right, well, thank you, Ben, and thanks everyone for joining us today. It's nice to see all of you and hear your introductions. Welcome to Sustainable Philadelphia. I'm Suzette Munley, the president of the Center City Business Association. Just to give you a little background, for 45 years, we've been dedicated to making Center City the strong central business core that supports the economic success of the entire region. We provide opportunities, we educate our community, and we embrace differences, which creates a vibrant environment ripe for growth and collaboration. We understand that it is imperative that our business community is at the forefront, working on solutions to mitigate, prevent, and adapt to the impacts of climate change so we all can continue to grow, thrive, and build sustainable communities. So we're happy you could join us for today's conversation. To quickly mention a few of our upcoming events, we have an online networking at noon event in July, and our next lunch with the city leaders is with Angela Val, the president and CEO of Visit Philadelphia. For today's event, we encourage you to use the chat to connect with each other. And if you have questions today, you can raise your hand or simply unmute. And you'll also find a link to our program in the chat as well. Michael introduced himself earlier, but I like to acknowledge him as a sustaining sponsor and preferred benefits provider, Penworth Financial Services. And we're also pleased to collaborate with the Energy Co-op and the Sustainable Business Network of Philadelphia. And now I'd like to welcome Center City Business Association Vice President and creator of this series, David Lane, to say a few words and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Suzette. Thank you very much. I'm David Lane. I am the VP of CCBA and also co-founder of Lev Lane, a marketing communications agency in downtown Philadelphia. So why did we create this series? Well, we understand that a healthy city with clean air to breathe, fresh water to drink, parks and open spaces for recreation are the building blocks for strong economic activity, a city where people want to work, live, raise families, and enjoy life in a healthy urban environment. And that is what we want for our city and why we created this series. I'd like to talk about our speaker and the Clean Air Council. The Clean Air Council is responsible for the air we breathe. And that's a pretty big lift, as Joe will tell you. They have been around for many years, since 1967. They were here before the founding of the EPA, the Clean Air Act, Earth Day, and these are the folks that work behind the scenes. Many of us don't know they are working and helping in so many areas, but if it wasn't for groups like the Clean Air Council and so many other local environmental and conservation organizations, we would not be as healthy and as happy as we are today. So we're really very, very thrilled to bring you Joe Minott, who is the executive director and chief counsel of the Clean Air Council. In his role, he supervises and provides legal advice for all of the Clean Air Council projects. He has developed statewide recognition for his work on transportation and urban air pollution issues, and has served on the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection's Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee and Environmental Justice Advisory Committee, the City of Philadelphia's Air Pollution Control Board, and he has over 30 years of community organizing experience. Joe holds an MA in political science from Penn and a JD from Villanova University School of Law. And his biography is in the program that we emailed to you earlier. And very happy to welcome Joe Minott. Joe, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, will I see the other people there? There we go. I like that. So just to let you a little bit know about the style that I prefer, I want to respond to the questions and concerns that you have. So I have no problems being interrupted at any point, and we can discuss anything that is of interest to you. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, which hopefully you'll find interesting. And if I see a lot of yawning, I may just skip that part and go on to something a little bit more interesting. But I have been a lawyer, environmental activist for 40 years. I was the son of a U.S. diplomat, so I grew up overseas. I was born in Norway, and then we lived in Paris, and then Madagascar, South Africa when apartheid was still fully in force, and then Mauritius, which if you haven't ever been to, is absolutely gorgeous island. It's a spit in the ocean, in the Indian Ocean, and really nice. I didn't come back to the United States until I was about 16. I actually spoke much better French than I did English. I live in Center City. I am a city boy through and through. I love Center City, Philadelphia. I don't own a car. I'm a vegetarian for environmental reasons. I have 2 sons and 2 granddaughters. I head up an organization called the Clean Air Council, which is works with a lot of other great organizations in Philadelphia, such as Sustainable Business Network, Penn Future, even some of the sort of the national groups. So the one thing that I have found in my 40 years of working as an environmentalist in Pennsylvania is, one, boy, are we really needed, and two, it is a relatively small community, so everyone tends to know everyone, which makes us get along pretty well, which I think is pretty good. So when I was first invited to speak, I was a little bit nervous because it's like, okay, am I really a business person? Do I understand sort of where business people come from and what their concerns are? And having the ego that I have, I felt, yeah, I'm going to do just fine. I'll tell them what I think, and they'll be happy with it. But in fact, I do have a little bit of business background. When I was in graduate from high school, I wasn't getting along terribly well with my father, and so I thought the way to get back to him is to tell him I was not going to go to college. I was absolutely not going to go to college. I was going to start my own business, and I started a landscaping business out in Chestnut Hill, and it turned out to be very profitable and paid for college, graduate school, and part of law school. So that worked out. That worked out very well for me. But ever since I got back from overseas, I've been in Philadelphia and love it. And then of course I run a nonprofit, which is a business, and it has to be run like a business. So we don't have a profit motive. We're not allowed to make a profit, or if we do, it has to be sort of reinvested in the work that we do. But it is a business. So I feel like I'm part of the team here, that I can actually legitimately discuss concerns that might be of interest to you. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Clean Air Council. David very kindly sort of went through the history of it, so I won't bore you with that again. But we are a somewhat litigious organization, of which I'm quite proud. We also have community organizers that work in the communities that are threatened by a pollution source, or just sort of need help getting government to sort of respond to their needs. We're probably best known, I don't know if this is good or bad, and luckily most of you look like you're too young to sort of have even known about this, is that we sued the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the early 80s for refusing to implement an automobile emissions testing program. So those of you that are from around here remember that once a year you used to have to take your car to the gas station, and they would put a probe up and sort of see whether your car was being kept maintained properly and what have you. It's been an amazingly unpopular program, but it is actually an amazingly effective program. And the state legislature, who has, and I don't understand why, never been terribly fond of the Clean Air Council, decided to forbid the implementation of that program in Pennsylvania. And it is a case that went up to the Supreme Court twice. And finally, a Judge Bechtel of the U.S. District Court held Pennsylvania in contempt for not implementing a program that they were mandated to implement by federal law. And all of their, he wrote a letter to, I'm trying to remember who the Department of Transportation head was at the time, saying you are not to spend any more highway construction funds in Pennsylvania until they come out of contempt. So the legislature immediately changed their minds. The program was implemented, and they've then, as punishment, there was a provision put in the budget that no state monies could go to the Clean Air Council, which I was absolutely dying to litigate as totally unconstitutional. But many of my friends who were nonprofits and getting money from the state sort of suggested maybe that was not such a good idea. And in fact, it hasn't harmed us in the least. We still do a lot of litigation. We have litigated in Philadelphia against the old Northwest incinerator, if you remember that one, in Roxborough. What we found, and it's not untypical, I don't want to sort of point the finger at Philadelphia as being unique, but what they were doing is not actually incinerating the waste, but actually just shrinking it. And so instead of burning it at about, 1,500 degrees, they were actually putting it through at about 800 degrees, which meant that it shrunk the amount, and then they could take that and put it in landfills. And being the good bureaucrats that they were, all that data was right there. It was one of the easiest cases that we've ever implemented. And that incinerator was closed soon afterwards. And then we've also sued the city of Philadelphia for the odors at the sewage treatment plant, or I guess it's a water treatment plant in the lower Northeast, where if you're from that area, the odors are just absolutely disgusting. And what was interesting as a young attorney is that when I went up there, it was all I could do not to gag. I felt saying to everyone, "Why don't we meet in my office in Center City rather than out in Bridesburg, where all this is happening?" But they said no, and we met with the water department, and we met with the residents there, and we constantly undervalue what community members know about what goes on in their community. We tend to sort of dismiss them, and yet they really do know. And the way I came to find that out is that I was just sitting there, frankly, with tears coming down my eyes, because the stench was so awful, and the community lives with that. And every time the stench would smell, it made no difference to me. It was still, nauseating. But the people in the community say, "Oh yeah, that's from that company." Oh yeah, that's what they knew exactly what was going on. And it's been sort of the great joy of the Clean Air Council to work with community members throughout Pennsylvania and Delaware, some in New York, some in New Jersey, and help them get the respect that they deserve when they complain about something not being right in their community. They actually know what they're talking about. They really do know what they're talking about. And as I've said many times, the Clean Air Council is not an environmental justice community, but we can work with environmental justice communities, and we bring a lot to it. We bring lawyers, we bring engineers, we bring community organizers. public health educators and what have you. And we have played, I think, an important role. So for right now, for you Philadelphians, you know that the old Sunoco plant, the refinery, used to be the largest single pollution source from a stationary source in the area. There was a fire, it burned down, and they chose not to rebuild it, and Hilco bought it, and now they're doing a lot of remediation. Council is working very closely with the community there to make sure that the remediation is done properly, separately from us. Council's not involved in it. They have their own lawyers trying to work on a community benefits agreement with Hilco, where their reasoning, which I think is fair, is that they've been victims of the pollution, for 150 years, when as long as it was a refinery, and that they feel that the new owner should show them some respect and do something positive for the community, and hopefully that will happen. We do a lot of lobbying. We actually have a 501c4, which is also a nonprofit, but one that allows you to do electoral work and much more lobbying than the Clean Air Council, which is a C3, can do. And so we spend a lot of time in Harrisburg, in City Hall, and in Congress. I think we're probably the least popular people in the U.S. in the state legislature, but we do go there regularly, nevertheless. And it will be interesting to see with the changes in through the gerrymandering, where how that impacts the new Pennsylvania Senate and the new Pennsylvania House. There is some murmuring. I think it's overly optimistic that the Democrats might capture one of the houses, probably the House, but I don't think that will happen. But who knows? Let's see what else. So the issue that I am absolutely passionate about, and frankly keeps me up at night, is climate change. When I started 40 years ago at the Clean Air Council, we knew about climate change. The science was pretty good. It's not as good. It wasn't as good as it is now, but it definitely, we knew about climate change. We knew the trajectory of climate change. We knew what the impact was going to be. And I was wined and dined by the gas industry back then, who were making the argument that natural gas was a bridge away from coal. Pennsylvania is a big coal state, and natural gas, would be the bridge from coal to wind and solar and what have you. And I didn't totally reject it, but 40 years later, it turned out that was totally untrue. And in fact, that natural gas is growing. It is impacting many communities throughout Pennsylvania. It is a fossil fuel. I am not convinced that if you look at the life cycle, that is from the ground to the burning, that it is any better than coal. Coal is dirty when it burns. Gas is clean when it burns, but all through the whole production of natural gas, the pipelines that they have to build, and all of that, they all leak and they produce methane. And we need to get away from natural gas, which is going to be very hard for a state or like Pennsylvania that's been a fossil fuel state since oil was discovered in, I don't know, 18 something. Ever since it's been a fossil fuel state. It sees itself as a fossil fuel state. The politics in the legislature are very protective of the fossil fuel industry. the state legislature does two things. One is it tends to block the ability of local governments to move ahead and implement sort of more progressive climate change plans if they want to, if it harms natural gas. And they subsidize natural gas in a way that they don't subsidize wind, solar, geothermal, and what have you. And in fact, right now, the Clean Air Council is in sort of a little bit of a fight with PGW, which is obviously and has been a gas utility for 100 and some years in Philadelphia. It started as just the company that would light the lights at night, and now has become a full-blown utility in Philadelphia. And the council is, as is Penn Future and sort of all the other groups that we work with, sort of pushing them to sort of like, okay, you can't stay a fossil fuel company. You have to move where the science tells you have to move. You have to diversify and reduce the amount of fossil fuels that you use. The other thing to know about PGW, and it's through no fault of theirs, is that their pipelines are ancient and leak like sieves. So it's, we're getting a fair amount of methane that is just wasted. And methane, as you probably know, is about 87 times more potent than carbon dioxide over the short term. So the most recent IPCC report, the United Nations report, has focused on methane as probably the most important pollutant that we need to get under control if we want to slow down climate change. So this is something that's near and dear to Philadelphia. It's a Philadelphia utility. We need to persuade them that they have to take climate change seriously. Now, the problem with getting the state and even the federal government, frankly, whether it was Obama or Biden, their choice is all of the above, and no, it's not all of the above anymore. It can't be all of the above anymore. We have to make decisions that are moving us towards, clean energy that doesn't contribute to climate change. And that is not an easy thing to do. So I don't want to come across as sort of arrogant and saying, yes, just do this and do that, because you're talking about people's jobs. I mean, PGW has a lot of employees who specialize in doing repairs on sort of, gas infrastructure. Philadelphia has more people living in deep poverty than any other city in the United States. We certainly don't want to do something that is going to make rates more expensive for them. But ultimately, we need to find a solution that protects low-income ratepayers, creates jobs that present employees can sort of go into or get trained into. We cannot allow the argument that switching away from gas is going to cost jobs. Yes, it will cost jobs, but there are new jobs to be created in the new green economy, and we need to make that switch. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect the federal government and the state government to help employees that are I would say stuck in the fossil fuel industry to move to new jobs. And for some people, I mean, I assume if I was a pipe fitter at age, I'm going to be 68 soon, I probably would not switch very easily to some totally different job. And so we have to deal with the older population in the union that probably will not make the switch, and make sure that they are not penalized because the country needs to go towards clean fuel. The other thing that drives me absolutely 100% crazy is this idea that we need to expand natural gas infrastructure in Pennsylvania in order to somehow alleviate the war in Ukraine. That is nonsense. Two problems with that. One is countries like Germany made a conscious decision they thought that they could remain friendly with Russia, and they became very dependent on Russian fossil fuel. It turned out to be obviously a great mistake. And secondly, Russia the key to all of these countries, including the United States, is to become energy independent, and you cannot become energy independent with fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are a commodity that goes on the world market. So for instance, right now, as you know, gas is going through the roof in Pennsylvania. The United States is still exporting a lot of its oil. So it's oil, natural gas is a commodity that's sold to the highest bidder. If you want to become energy independent, it has to be solar, wind, geothermal, or most important of all, energy efficiency, which is one of these things that is low cost, super cost effective, and for some reason so non-sexy that no one seems to really want to spend a lot of money on it. But that's the number one thing that we need to do. The other thing that we need to do is, so there's a lot of money coming in right now from the federal government through the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars coming in to states across the country and into cities, mostly to build infrastructure. So this is important for Philadelphia. If whatever money Philadelphia takes, or Pennsylvania takes, or any other state takes to rebuild its infrastructure, they must rebuild it with climate change in mind. They must make the infrastructure more resilient to climate change, because we've already seen what happens. If we have a terrible storm, the whole public transit system can go out. So bridges, can be destroyed. Communities, especially low-income communities, are flooded and take years and years to recover. So I think the message that I would say to everyone sitting here and anyone that would listen to this on YouTube afterwards is make sure that the money is wisely spent, and that means that it's being spent to make the infrastructure more resilient. And two, and I'm sorry to say this about the city of Philadelphia, which is unfortunately over bureaucratic sometimes in its decision making. I fear that they may not maximize the amount of money that they could get. And when you're a city as strapped for cash and with so many people living in poverty, you don't have the luxury of going slowly. Your hand should be out immediately, trying to persuade the government to give you as much money as possible to do good for the city of Philadelphia. That's something that we as citizens or residents of Philadelphia should just make sure that that is happening. So that's I'll get off my soapbox now. That's sort of what I preach on everything. And I'm sorry if you've heard it 10,000 times. I imagine every single environmental group out there, when they start any talk, they start with the need to address climate change. Now, the good news on climate change, I think, is that Pennsylvania has, and again, getting Pennsylvania to do anything on climate change is almost impossible. The city, the Governor Wolf has ordered DEP to develop regulations that would allow Pennsylvania to join RGGI, which is the Regional Gas something initiative, but regional gas.
Reggie's fine.
Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Reggie.
There you go. Thank you. I knew there'd be someone that knew the whole name. That is being fought. It's actually the Clean Air Council with Penn Future and others are litigating this right now. The legislature does not want it to move forward. The unions don't want it to move forward. The gas industry doesn't want it to move forward. But it is a proven winner when it comes to climate change. And essentially, what it does is it imposes a fee, not a tax, because if it was a tax, it would have to go through the legislature. But it imposes a fee on every ton of CO2 that's emitted, and then that fee goes into a fund that can then be used to retrofit old buildings, help ratepayers make their houses low-income ratepayer, make their homes more energy efficient, move forward with with solar. So it's a true tested program that's worked in other states and been very, very successful. Between all of us and in secret, and I guess to the YouTube people that will hear later, RGGI is not the be all and end all of where we need to be. It is a relatively small step in terms of actually addressing climate change in Pennsylvania, but it is for Pennsylvania a major first step, and one that I hope all of you support and talk up and what have you. Now, again, I'm just going to stop for a second here before I go. Any questions, any thoughts, any pushbacks? Anyone already really pissed off by something Joe Minott said? I'm used to it, so don't worry about it. Just let me know what you're thinking.
Hey, Joe, I have a question
Sure.
about RGGI, and I'm not sure if I have this right, but my understanding was the way it's passed right now, when we go to auction, where we can actually take, it's the cap and trade program. So when we have the ability to sell the credits or whatever you call it that we have, the money right now is the way it's written, it's not able to be spent providing workers in the current structure and current gas system to train them for new jobs in renewable energy. And that funding, I thought at this point, was coming to the Clean Air Council or people that were involved in clean air only until that gets changed. Do I have that right?
Yeah, partially, mostly right. Yes. So the ideal situation would have been, frankly, for the legislature to not only pass RGGI, but determine how the monies can be spent, and that could be spent on job training. It could be spent on subsidizing lower income ratepayers and all of that. Unfortunately, since the legislature didn't act and it was passed by regulation, all of the money goes into the Clean Air Fund, and the Clean Air Fund is limited to things that lower pollution. So that's not the exact wording. As a lawyer, I should be more careful, but essentially it has to go to things that actually reduce pollution in some way. So it could help build windmills. It could potentially make low-income houses more energy efficient, because that reduces emissions. So it can do a lot of good, but it can't do all of the stuff that we would like to see, including job transition training. That is something that it will either have to come from money from the federal government or the legislature itself. Now, my understanding is Pennsylvania has about a $19 billion surplus right now. Is right? Are you aware of that? So, a couple of $1 billion on job training, I think, would not go amiss. So I think the money is there to do the right thing. Being the cynic that I am, I suspect it will not be used to do the right thing. But that's a really good question. So it can do a lot of good from an environmental point of view, but it can't. The biggest existential threat that workers have in the fossil fuel industry is that their jobs will be gone.
Right.
There will be no more jobs, and those are well-paid jobs. And I think, and it's not up to environmental groups, that we have no credibility. I can't go to the AFL-CIO and say, listen, I got a plan for you. This is the way it's got to be done. I mean, that's not going to work. They have to come to this on their own and see that, in fact, the green economy does have plenty of good union jobs, and the government will help to retrain, and then those that have to retire, help them, retire. So yeah, that's a really, really good question, and one that's talked about all the time. And what's frustrating is that the unions and the environmentalists have the same people, the same elected officials that support unions, support environmentalists, and those that are against union, against the environmentalists, but we should not be fighting with unions. We should be working to figure out a way to work together, because the future is in us working together. And I'm hoping that with a little bit of money that's left in the budget, and the views of President Biden, we're going to get there. I really hope we're going to get there, because it makes no sense for environmentalists and unions to fight.
Joe, I have a question.
Sure.
Next year, we're going to elect a new mayor in town. So, thinking back, Ed Rendell was a great mayor. He was a great environmental governor, right? Michael Nutter, I think, was a great environmental mayor as well. So who might we consider among the folks that could be candidates would be best for the environment for our city? Is it?
That's a really good question, and I don't know that I have a good answer to it. I mean, a number of the people that have not announced yet have already called the Clean Air Council to assure me how great their environmental record will be. I like Ellen Gim. I think she's an amazing person. She's very progressive. I feel she'll be very comfortable she'll be doing the right thing on environmental issues. The city has some very serious problems, so I doubt that environment is going to be the top priority for any mayor. But certainly groups like Pet Environment, Clean Air Council, and everyone else are going to be pushing hard for a mayor that is sensitive to environmental issues. There's only so much the city can do on its own, though. I mean, it really needs support from the state, and that's where the biggest barrier. So, for instance, New York more recently has passed a law that says, I think, I'm not 100% of the law, but I believe it says that all new high-rise buildings need to be electrified. You can't use gas there anymore, and there's a suggestion to do that in Philadelphia too, but it's being blocked by the legislature, or the legislature's attempting to block it. So even the most progressive, best environmental mayor in Philadelphia is going to have to deal with a hostile Pennsylvania legislature that will try and preempt anything really, really creative. And by the way, just officially, because this is being recorded, I'm not endorsing anyone. That was just an opinion.
Right.
Any other questions, or should I move on?
Joe, I was just going to jump in real quick and mention that I believe it's about $8 billion surplus in the General Assembly budget and the PA budget, and I just did a quick research. 2.2 billion of that is from ARPA stimulus money,
right?
American Rescue Plan stimulus money that had been held aside.
Well, thank you for correcting me in front of everyone and the whole YouTube
No,
and what have you.
certainly not the point of that, but just
No,
Not the
that's,
point of that, Joe. I just wanted to point out that some of that money is specifically coming from the stimulus
yeah.
package that has not been spent out as
So
well.
8 billion is still a lot of money, and I think could be used for job transition. But we'll see.
Considerable.
Knowing the politics of Pennsylvania, I suspect that the Republicans are not going to want to spend that money and just keep it for a rainy day. But we'll see.
Hey, Joe, one last, not to keep us in politics, but one last question. So the governor's race, should we elect a governor who is not climate friendly, they have the ability to repeal Reggie, correct?
Well, I got to be careful about that because we're actually in litigation on that as a spend future. I would say they would have to go through a process if they wanted to get out of Reggie, because it is now the law in Pennsylvania, even though it's being litigated. My personal opinion is that a new governor could not just say we're out of Reggie, though certainly other governors have done that. I think they'd have to go through a rulemaking process undoing the existing regulation that puts us in Reggie. So that is a really good question.
I have a quick question and I guess comment.
Good.
Does the Clean Air Network and then also the other sustainable leaders in this room beat the drum much about the inherent benefit of dense mixed-use living in a city like Philadelphia? Here we've had bike messengers for decades. We're able to walk, take transit, take bicycle to and from our day-to-day errands and chores. On South Street West, I know a lot of staff members commute from other neighborhoods via bicycle or train. And I really feel it's something that Joe Average out there thinks that cities are dirty places, that they're not clean, but actually that in a sense, it's the reverse, where our carbon footprint and our pollution per capita is much lower than a suburbanite who has a ecologically dead lawn out there. And so I'm wondering, is there much beating of the drum and also, pushing for things like, hey, why hasn't there been transit-oriented development been approved? Like, I think there's been about 20 suggested locations along our subway lines, and only maybe 3 of them have been approved.
Yep.
It's ridiculous, in my opinion. And also, with density, then it's a better business environment because people live right above the storefront.
Yeah, so I think every environmental organization that I know understands the benefits of having densely populated areas. When I lived in the suburbs, and I will confess I absolutely loathed it. You have to drive everywhere. There are no sidewalks. It's horrible, and I have to cut a lawn every week, which I really loathe doing, and it's environmentally unsound. You're right that I don't think transit-oriented development is automatically at the top of the list of enough environmental groups. We tend to be looking at more sort of immediate, like climate change. We need to do it. Transit-oriented development actually is a solution to climate change. So I think that's a good reminder to groups like mine and obviously the representatives of Penn Future and Sustainable Business Network that we should be pushing more for for that. And so I appreciate that. Yeah, that definitely needs to be done. I noticed there's some things in the chat. Did that answer your question or not? Well, why it's getting done, I don't know. I mean, you have these sort of bizarre within the city, these bizarre rules that the councilman or woman that represents the district gets to make sort of all of the main decisions, which seems a totally absurd and antiquated policy, but it's one that no one seems willing to buck the system on that, and I do think that is a major barrier to a lot of improvements, and frankly, I probably shouldn't say this because it's just my personal opinion. I think it leads to a lot of corruption too. So, yeah,
Thank you.
Joe Minott said that on this day, on this program. So yes, I did. Let's see, any questions?
Not in the chat, no.
Okay,
No.
okay, good. So let me just keep going. We still have time, right?
Another, yeah, a little bit more.
A little bit more? Ooh,
Yeah, sure.
I have so much more to say. Okay. Let me
But we
ask,
could probably keep going for weeks.
Yeah, that is true. Let me ask you, everyone that's here, everyone that's listening, do you actually know how clean the air is either where you work, where you live, or where you recreate?
Nope.
No, we don't.
Only through my phone on the app, where if you scroll under the weather, it tells you about your air quality. And until they added that, I would have had no idea that sometimes where I live, it's not good. But I would never have suspected that.
But even that is really misleading, because it is sort of broadly, what is the air quality in Philadelphia, for instance? What we have found, and it became very apparent to us. So in 2018 in Kensington, there was a scrap metal yard that burst into flames, and it took fire department forever to put it out. We happened to have a resident there that was using one of the air monitors that the Clean Air Council has and works with in low-income groups to get people to sort of look at what the air quality is in their neighborhood. And we found that that the particulate matter, small particulate matter, 2.5 micrograms per cubic meter. That's the level. Was recorded at 260, and the 24-hour standard is 35. No city monitor picked that up. So the point that I'm making is that yes, we have good laws, that deal with a lot of air quality, but they tell you very, very little about what it's like in your community or right outside of, where you do business, or the trails that you choose to walk for recreation. It doesn't tell you very much about that. You have to sort of monitor that yourself. And the Clean Air Council has a pretty robust program of working in low-income communities, environmental justice communities, and we buy the monitors that are actually very accurate, show them how to use it, and they do their own air monitoring. And we use it as an organizing tool, so the community members know more about what's going on in the community, and then we help them use that information to make reports to the city, to meet there with elected officials, to complain about sort of why is the air quality so high here. In your home, it's the same thing. You think you're safe in your home, but indoor air pollution is actually sometimes more of a threat than outdoor air pollution, especially if you have gas, for instance. If you do your heating in gas and you're cooking by gas, if you have radon, I don't know how many of you have had your houses tested for radon. I was in a house for 20 some years before I even heard of radon and tested for it. And it turns out that my finished basement had high levels of radon. So we have to go and have that vented. So it's just the point I'm trying to make is that we've made progress in terms of overall emissions. We're still developing chemicals that that we don't understand when we make them, what the long-term impact is going to be. PFAS is one of them. Is very effective at putting out fires, and now we find that it's a forever chemical, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it. A lot of houses have lead in them, and one of the fastest ways that kids get lead poisoning is not from chipping from lead paint chips in their house, but from suburban redevelopment. When they redo the house and they come in and tear stuff down and what have you, they let out a lot of lead. And why is it? This is my big question. Why is it that kids like to eat the lead? Any guesses? I mean,
Because it tastes sweet.
go ahead.
I said because it tastes sweet.
It's good. It's sweet. Lead is sweet. Yeah. So that's why they eat it. The other thing you should know is that not that long ago there was a graduate student from Penn that wanted to see how much lead there was in on the streets in Philadelphia, because we are an old industrial town. There was lead in gasoline for years. And I laughed at him when he said that. I said, well, we've had some major storms. I mean, it's all been washed away. And the answer is no, it hasn't been washed away. Many of the streets in Philadelphia have some lead dust on them. And the lead is so heavy that it doesn't get washed away. So it doesn't get cleaned away. It's just there. So there are some legacy pollutants that we're going to be exposed to simply because we live in an old industrial town, and that's just what comes with it. So, for instance, people are often call and say, I have this nice house in South Philadelphia. I want to do a vegetable garden, and the advice is you're welcome to do a vegetable garden, but don't do it in the ground in the soil that's already there. That soil has to be taken out, or you do it in boxes or what have you, but you don't do it in the soil that's there. Almost every area in Philadelphia has contaminated soil. So,
Hey, Joe, can I ask a quick question about Hilco remediation?
yes.
Are there signs?
Tell people who Hilco is, so everyone's on the same page.
You're probably better at that than I am.
The developers that took over the Sunoco
Yeah.
project and are making it a large industrial commercial rental space.
Well, we're not totally sure what they're doing. They've switched the lines a couple of times. Last time I spoke to them, they were going to have a luxury hotel. It's right on the river. I was trying to figure out how does that work but anyway, go ahead and ask your question.
So I wasn't sure if I read that there were signs that the remediation was polluting the air, and that's why there was some activism surrounding that. Is there already evidence of that?
So the whole area is obviously highly contaminated, and from the community's point of view, and I don't know if there's been any monitoring from the community's point of view, whenever you move or dig or do anything, some of that dust is going to go into the community and will be contaminated. And I think there's some merit to that concern. And the other thing is, as I said, I think in my opening bit, the Clean Air Council has been very involved in looking at the proposed cleanup standards. And I mean, Sunoco has some responsibility, PES has some responsibility, and then Hilco has some responsibility. So we want to make sure that someone is being held responsible for cleaning up the site properly. And we've been relatively successful at getting DEP to tighten what Evergreen, which is the company that Sunoco chose to be responsible to clean up, is doing. So yeah.
Marcus, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, for the Hilton site, have they agreed to include a vegetated riparian buffer zone? I believe the city regs are supposed to be 50 feet at minimum, and then ideally it should be 100 feet.
So that is an ongoing issue, not only at Hilco, but frankly against abandoned industrial sites up and down the river. And the council has been talking to William Penn about doing some studies on that. One of the things that we're concerned about is that if Hillco moves too much land in order to protect itself from the overflow of the river, all they're going to do is flood the airport. And so there needs to be a certain amount of coordination, and the city needs to be involved in saying, no, that doesn't make sense. But there is a great need. I mean, I don't know if, I'm sure you're all aware of this, that up and down the river, there's tons of abandoned industrial sites, and something needs to be done to those sites in order to protect the river. And it could be as simple as frankly turning them into green spaces, with trees, or having. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. It's not my specialty. There's a lot of stuff that can be done and must be done. It seems to me there's a real lack of will to address that. Part of it is because who wants to pay the money for it? That's a really good question. You've actually asked two really good questions now. So why don't you ask a third?
Well, on that, just as a follow-up, yeah, I mean, flood remediation is it's a proven winner, and it seems like it would dovetail really nicely with the extension of the Schuylkill River Trail / East Coast Greenway. This should have been negotiated to begin with, and it's quite frankly disappointing but not unexpected.
Yeah. So there has been. I personally have talked to Hillco about the trail because that's something that's near and dear to me. We have not talked to them about the buffers, though. That's something that's. Oh, so in as an example, in the plans that DEP initially approved, there was no mention of climate change at all. It's like, this is crazy. And one of the things that we got to start looking at now is PFAS. That wasn't in it either. So there's a real need for people to be paying attention and speaking to their elected officials about what are you doing to protect the river, and this is a perfect place to link up the trail, and have you been talking to Hillco? My sense is, I probably shouldn't be saying this because it's certainly not a commitment, that when I spoke to Hillco, they were quite open to the idea of a trail, of the trail. So I'm somewhat optimistic about that. But I have nothing in writing. There's nothing enforceable. It's just sort of a informal commitment.
So Joe, I really didn't mean to cut you short or anything, but out of respect for your time and everybody else here, just before we close, is there anything that people or businesses can do to get involved with the Clean Air Council?
You sign up for our alerts. You don't have to take all of them, but some of them, might resonate with you. If you're having a problem, an indoor air quality problem or an outdoor air quality problem, call us. One of the things that we're trying to do a lot of work on is sidewalks. If you want, the population of Philadelphia is becoming more closer to my age than some of you here, and we need good sidewalks. And as you probably know, that under Philadelphia law, the owner of the property is responsible for the sidewalks. We can decide whether that's fair or unfair. But when you go into low-income communities where they do a lot of walking, they can't afford that. So there needs to be some mechanism to sort of help, help with sidewalks there. So there's a whole host of things of issues that Philadelphia should be looking at. Unfortunately, it is constrained by the tax base that it has. It should be getting a lot more money from the state legislature, but we're not liked, by the state legislature, so they're reluctant to give anything to Philadelphia. But call me if there's anything the Clean Air Council can do. Just definitely.
Your contact information on your site? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go to our site and have a look. You actually can go also to the Clean Clean Air Action Fund, if you're interested in sort of where the Clean Air Council is going politically. That will give you some information too.
Okay. And Alex, did you have something you wanted an event or something to mention?
I did, yes. And I saw Anna actually share something very related to it. But SBN is hosting a webinar next week on new energy efficiency incentives from PICO, Small Business Solutions. So please do register for that webinar. It's open to everyone. And we look forward to sharing some tools to help to reduce your energy bills and also contribute to hopefully greater air quality for Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's great. I second. Everyone should go to that.
Terrific. Well, and David and people here or anybody who wants to continue the conversation or other events as part of the series, we can get that going. And Joe, I just want to thank you for everything that you're doing, the presentation today, and taking your time to be with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I hope I didn't just babble. I usually have an outline that I follow, but this one, I just went with my gut. So, and lawyers, we love to talk. So that's
You did great. You did great.
Okay.
You did great. We thank you for your work and your staff's work, and Alex too. Haven't met you before, I don't think, but we need people like you, because if we don't have people like you, we're all going to have a lot shorter lifespans and not very comfortable ones down the road. So
Definitely need people of Alex's age to become involved. Yeah, that is absolutely true.
Lauren, I didn't see Lauren there. And Lauren, yes.
Yes. You young
Thank
people are the future. You are the future.
Well, thanks again, everybody,
A
and
lot of
thank you all
pressure,
for
but we're
coming.
doing our best.
We
Thank you.
try.